Tonight on the Online Wine Tasting Club, we say a very sad goodbye to our trusty old studio in the winery. Caroline shocks everybody by drinking non-alcoholic wine. And there is something very unusual in the skies over Leighton Buzzard. It's time to explore the latest trends in wine with the Discoverer series.
Well, good evening and welcome to 2020, whatever it is now. I'm not going to put a number on the end of that. I'm very glad that the highlight reel of 2021 is still me falling off a bench. Taylor, you need to sort something else in your intro videos. We need to change
definitely
that up.
my favourite moment.
So very, very glad that Caroline made it after we may or may not have announced that we'd set up over here. So for those of you who've joined us many times before, you'll have seen us in Tring Winery, and we've been promising that we'd have a new studio and area for 6, 7, 8, 10, 14 months now.
Quite a long time.
But here we are. We are in Leighton Buzzard, which is where we do all the packing for your tastings, all that kind of stuff. And we decided Alex would talk to his friend Elon Musk and get us a Starlink. So we're getting internet from space because it was easier to get internet from space than it was to get BT to dig up the road and give us a cable. But enough about our technology fun and games here. Caroline, where are
Hello.
we? What's happening? Do you want to say hi to the people? Because you need to spend more time here, and then I don't have to deal with Shirt McGee.
Well, it seems that I'm being put in this chair a little bit more often, which is lovely. So, hi, I'm Caroline, and I work with these two wonderful chaps. It's not what I normally call them, but we'll go with that tonight. Firstly, I want to say a massive welcome back to all of
Claire, I've seen you've got your snacks on the go, so you're definitely at a work event. We don't have the cheese, so we're not sure. This could be a party, but we've not had an investigation to see if I'm here or not.
Exactly,
yet.
and I've only popped in for 25 minutes, so we're
that's
all good.
Right. But anyway, back to you.
So welcome back to all of our loyal club members. It's lovely to have you back with us for our January tasting. To everybody who was lucky enough to get a gift subscription for Christmas, whether it was in one of our lovely hampers or just on its own. If it wasn't in a hamper, maybe we can go for that next year. And so yeah, welcome.
Sorry, are you doing a December upsell in January?
Yes.
Caroline's always upselling Christmas presents before we've even started. They've had 30 seconds of us, and you're trying to tell them to buy something else, right? Let them drink the wine and enjoy it before you get so overexcited.
Oh dear. Anyway, welcome. It's wonderful to have you joining us. Jamie, what can our wonderful new club members expect from their time with the Online Wine Tasting Club?
So it's about lots of fun wines, things that you may or may not have tried before, that you get you a little bit out of your comfort zone if you want, but without it being scary, obnoxious, over-the-top shirts, a little bit silly, but good wine knowledge, good wine education, but fun. We want you to open wines up, explore them. If you love them, that's great. Buy 27 bottles of them. If you don't love them, that's also fine because you've got a sample. You go, that's not my thing. So therefore, if today you then decide that, Slovenian Pinot Grigio is not for you, but I don't know how many people are going to be walking down the supermarket picking out Slovenian Pinot Grigio on a whim. So that's the kind of thing. The plant doesn't get a co-host credit, but it is better dressed than Alex this evening, so that's okay.
Which Alex Taylor is that?
The other one.
The other one.
There we go. Fantastic. But what we should probably do is we don't generally talk this much at the beginning. We're excited because it's a
we
new
don't.
year and a new studio.
I'm very excited. And
I'm going to pour this for you.
Thank you.
You say worriedly.
Yeah, we'll see how this one goes. Are the books just props? No, we do actually read them about 10 minutes before we go live. So
well, yeah, and If anyone has any questions on how to match food or wine,
yeah, we'll look
this
it up.
is not our Southwest USA tasting, is it?
No,
So we might be a little bit stuck today.
Have we got Queen Jancis, which is my go-to?
No, we don't. So
Right.
you're out.
But no, on a serious note, for everyone who's new,
Get some wine in your glass.
Is a trained winemaker. Jamie is a massively experienced certified sommelier, been in the wine trade, hospitality trade for 20 years.
It's amazing. I started when I was 3.
Yeah, I know. I've done a little bit here and there, got my diploma, that kind of thing. And, generally do a bit of marketing. But what we all love doing is talking about wine in a really informal way. And hopefully we help you to find a new wine that you wouldn't have considered otherwise. And hopefully learn a bit and definitely have lots of fun. So...
Okay, so let's get wine number 1 in the glass if you haven't already, because this is a wine drinking evening with a bit of me talking rather than a lot of me talking with not too much drinking. So that's sad. So when we decided we're going to do trends, so I people ask me what's going to happen in 2022. I wrote a little blog piece about what I think the trends for 2022 are going to be, and this tasting is kind of based around that. And we're starting to see across the world a lot more people going after no alcohol, low alcohol, a lot more about quality rather than quantity. And a lot of people have asked me, can we do a non-alcoholic wine tasting? And to be honest, I've always said we can't, because I've not found enough great non-alcoholic wines to put into a 6-pack to send out as a non-alcoholic wine. And I really believe there's so many great non-alcoholic drinks out there, if you want to drink something non-alcoholic, have something great.
It's really interesting because I, like probably many people out there, have had a couple of breaks from alcohol for a month or so. And during that,
a couple of hours off this afternoon.
I know. Well done. I noticed that. During that, it's the habit. It's the break, wind down from work. It's to get the kids into bed, drink to ease you into the evening. No, there's some lovely non-alcoholic beers out there now, and
but that's
online.
Taken its time. 20 years ago, you had Caliber, and that was about it. Now there's some really, really good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely, and there's some lovely spirits. Seedlip, which has now been bought by Diageo, amazingly. So all of those non-alcoholic are really hitting the big time. But wine, I feel I haven't ever found one that I thought actually I really would drink that. So I'm looking forward to tasting this.
I've not allowed
it yet.
Caroline or Alex to taste this because I just wanted to get their reaction straight off. So if they go, no, you've still not found a good non-alcoholic one, that's fine. But while they taste, I'll tell you a little bit about Deb or Tolly. So they're a 4th generation family in Australia in the Riverina area. So this is a big flat part, which generally isn't what you're always looking for when you're trying to make good quality wine. You want slopes and steepnesses. But what you do have there is you have this flat fertile land, so you can get good yield. So you can make wines in larger quantities more cheaply. You can mechanically harvest, you can do all this kind of stuff. But these guys make a different set of ranges. So they've got this Willow Glen range, which is their kind of easy drinking all day, every day. There's a Riesling, a Pinot Grigio, there's a Shiraz in this range. And they do a non-alcoholic, a sparkling, they do a non-alcoholic Gewurz Riesling, and they do a non-alcoholic Shiraz.
Yeah, which I'm getting a good non-alcoholic red.
In
really
the same range. But they do lots of things. They also make a very, very famous Australian wine, the Noble dessert wine, which is one of the best dessert wines on the planet.
Incredible.
But they also look at different things. They've got a 17 Trees brand, which they planted for 17 trees for every vehicle they had in their fleet to kind of do this carbon offsetting.
Okay.
So they do low and low. They do alternative makings of things. They do this carbon friendly, and they make really good wine. So 4th generation, they moved over from Italy and took this plot in Riverina, and it's still family owned and absolutely beautiful. What I like about this is they make this Gewurz Riesling at 0.0%. They also make a Gewürztraminer Riesling, same packaging, same branding as a normal wine. So they're not making just here's something that's non-alcoholic. So when we take a non-alcoholic wine, and I don't want to get too techie and too over the top with it, but
we have got a good question though here.
Dive in then. What do we got?
How is the wine made non-alcoholic?
Well, there we go. Well done, William.
William, just where I was about to get to.
What a great segue.
Preempting. So there's a few ways you can make non-alcoholic wine, but the two main ways are there's reverse osmosis. And for those who did biology class, we know we've got osmosis where you have a membrane and a liquid will go from a high concentration to a low concentration.
Okay.
So they do that to pull the
I
alcohol
didn't really
out
pay attention in biology.
through the membrane. And then there's another one called vacuum distillation, which sounds fancy.
That does sound fancy.
And this is made by vacuum distillation. So what they do is what we've got to do is we've got to get rid of the alcohol. And distillation, we see when we make whiskey, we make gin, that we boil the base and the alcohol comes up. And what you're trying to do is collect the alcohol because you want that intense alcohol. You want more alcohol.
Yeah.
With this, what we're doing is we vacuum it so the alcohol boils at a lower temperature and comes off, and we take that away.
And you remove it.
So you're removing it and you keep what's left.
Okay.
There.
And is what's left any good without further treatment?
It can be, but it can't be sometimes. So this is where a lot of non-alcoholic wine got a bad rap, because a lot of your aroma compounds will evaporate before alcohol evaporates. So you get a drinkable wine, but of no real character. You couldn't say this tastes like Chardonnay, this tastes like this, and it didn't taste like what the original product was. But what they now do is a little thing called aroma dosing. So they'll take, the grape juice that's been used before it's been fermented. So you've got those flavors of riesling, Gewürztraminer, or whatever it's going in. So they'll put just, plain grape juice into it to kind of give these aromas back in. Because what you also lose from the alcohol is alcohol gives wine a lot of its weight and a lot of its body. So you put this, this juice back in. Yes, it does add sugar to it. Yes, it does make it a little bit sweeter. And is it a carbon copy of the wine that you're drinking? No.
No, it can't be, can it? Because what the whole nature of wine is that it's an alcoholic
drink. If
I
put this in front of you, you would say this is a glass of wine, not this is a slur or a fruit juice or something like this. It's definitely not the wine.
Do you know what, Jamie? I have to say, I haven't yet tasted a non-alcoholic wine that has any real aroma of wine, or flavours of wine about it. And this definitely has that. I think what I'm also finding, maybe ours isn't quite chilled enough, but am I right in thinking it doesn't have the same acidity either? Does that go with the alcohol?
You do. Well, it's not so much, because what you've got is acidity is this balance between, you can have very, very high acid and very, very high sugar, and it's about the balance. But if you've got this wine that started with very high acidity, and then we just put in the grape juice and the grape must back in, you're putting the sugar back in, and you're not then re-fermenting to pull the sugar out to make the acid come back up again.
Same balance.
So you're going to end up with, if you taste this side by side, you're going to have a little bit more sugar in there. So the acidity is the same, but it's just dampened in the profile. Yeah. So you've still got that zip, that freshness. I think it's delicious.
I am really pleasantly surprised.
This is one of, if I was going out driving and going, I want to have a glass of wine, because you can only drink so many Coca-Colas or J2Os these days. That I'd be very happy to drink that as a glass of wine and go from there. But I'm really intrigued as to what people think, because there's a lot of would you take it?
Anna, I love that. Do you know, we were having this sausages. What's the alternative to sausages earlier? It's really interesting because. Having worked sort of more in the supermarket world of wine previously, I know that it's really difficult to get a buyer meeting these days if you don't have something no or low to talk about. So that's really high on the supermarket's agenda, because more and more people want it, and they want wine to keep up with the no alcoholic beers. But a lot of feedback we got was, I bought it by mistake because I thought it was your normal one, or things like this. That it's a really Marmite thing, I think.
So I think there's a few people in there that go, they agree it's delicious, it does the job, and there's a few people that go, don't try and be something you're not, and I get that. Yeah. The idea with that is to give it an option that is not horrible, that is drinkable, that is good. But we are the online wine tasting club, so do you think it's probably time to put real wine in the glass?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Right.
Although I am driving, so this is quite nice, actually.
Oh, have some more then.
Video.
Oh, we haven't done the video.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. I'm getting all excited. We're going to have a video about what we're going to do today.
Oh, yeah. Let's do that before we go any further.
That's what you'll stop us for, producer.
Welcome to 2022. It somehow feels like it's still simultaneously 2020, but also like the last 2 years have gone on forever. But COVID aside, the last decade has seen some quite astonishing changes happening in the wine world. So tonight, we're looking at what that means for you, for the wines that we're going to be drinking more of this year and into the future. We've decided to group these trends into 3 categories. Firstly, health. I think we're all a lot more aware of our health and grateful for when it's there. Many people are understandably becoming conscious of all the things they put into their body and how they can try to stay in better shape. Secondly, the impacts of a changing climate. We've all seen extreme weather events, and warming temperatures are hurting winemakers around the world, creating supply shortages. And finally, the sustainability. With all this talk about the climate, we're all very conscious of the impact our activities are having on that world. We'll be talking about how we can make wine more sustainably through farming techniques and also new lower carbon winemaking. We'll be starting off with 2 wines from the no and low alcohol category, which is one of the fastest growing areas in the market. Now, I am personally yet to be convinced, but Jamie's going to be showing us all something which he thinks has come closest to replicating the wine experience, but without the hangover. We're then going back a few years to the days way before our huge Malbecs and Chardonnays when wines were 10% alcohol or even lower. Now, many of us may have noticed slightly more frequent hangovers from wine, and we often assume it must be because of some nasty additives the winemakers have been adding. For example, you may have heard of sulfites. Many of the wines that brand themselves as things like natural or controversially clean imply that these are the causes of your headache, but actually there's no evidence of this whatsoever, and, ironically, too little sulfites can cause the presence of another chemical which actually does give you a headache. Now, that is not to imply that natural wines are a bad thing. Many of them are excellent and have a ton of character. But you do need to keep your wits about you, and just don't stress too much about the sulfites. If you're concerned about a headache, it's much, much better to keep track of, well, yes, the alcohol. Back in the 1980s, the government tried to give us a nice, easy unit of alcohol, and a glass of wine was probably around 1 unit. The problem is that that was based on a 125ml glass at around 10% alcohol. With the move to warmer parts of the winemaking world, that percentage has been creeping up. Order up some Californian Cabernet Sauvignon and get talked into a large glass, and you could find yourself with a 250ml portion of something that's actually around 16% alcohol, which translates to 4 units. So drinking 1 glass of that is the same as drinking 4 glasses of your old Blue Nun. And New World winemakers just make them so darn drinkable, so you might go on to a second and, well, you see the problem. It's just far easier to consume a lot of alcohol in your wine than it used to be. If you're concerned about that, the trouble is that alcohol-free wines have traditionally tasted, well, nothing like wine at all, or like Schlur. You just lose so much of the winey character. But modern techniques like reverse osmosis will take a finished wine and start pulling the alcohol out of it, and that has really improved things. So Jamie is going to give it a go to see if he can convert us with a 0% alcohol Gewürztraminer Riesling blend from De Bortoli in Australia. We are then trying a low alcohol Riesling from Germany because, wow, Jamie. Now, on changing climates, we have seen and heard so many awful tales of whole vineyards being wiped out by extreme weather. In Germany, we saw many in the Ahr Valley just last year destroyed by flooding. In Australia, California and South Africa, devastating fires. And in France, we've had the atrocious combination of a warm winter that wakes up the dormant plant with early frosts that kill off all of that new growth. And that has been so extreme that this year, yields in Champagne are down nearly 40%. But it's not even just in the north. Parts of the Languedoc in the south lost a whole fifth of their white grapes. In fact, the whole of France lost a third of all of its wine production this year. But we also have shortages from elsewhere in the old world, and even in places like New Zealand, where an exceptionally small harvest has created a mere 80 million bottle shortage of their precious Sauvignon Blanc. One of the most popular brands in Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc made a very subtle change this year, switching from New Zealand to Chile. South Africa's having a great year too, providing many grapes for popular wines. But one of the biggest winners is Eastern Europe, whose recent renaissance has been massively accelerated this year. But ultimately, some of the grapes that we know and love are just going to struggle as the climate gets warmer. So we're having to consider more blends and more unheard of grapes. Tonight we'll be looking at an ever-popular Pinot Grigio, but not from Italy, from Slovenia, and also a native grape variety from Romania known as Feteasca Neagra. Finally, there is sustainability, and there's no way to beat around the bush, but making wine is not a low-carbon process. The largest way it contributes to emissions is through the hideous waste of making, shipping all around the world, and then having to recycle glass bottles. Wineries are increasingly turning to techniques like solar panels, but also clever techniques like gravity-fed wineries, or capturing and using the carbon dioxide from the fermentation, rather than pumping it out into the air. Out in the vineyard, organic, sustainable practices are making sure that less chemical spraying is needed, instead mechanically weeding or encouraging helpful cover crops to grow, which can capture nitrogen from the air to feed the vines, rather than having to feed them with fertiliser. There's also a huge focus on reducing tilling, which can lead to soil erosion and deplete the fields of their precious layer of topsoil on which we all depend. And of course, there's a huge trend against those heavy glass bottles with a focus on alternative packaging techniques, which can protect the wine just as well as glass bottles, while reducing the carbon footprint by around 15 times. We will be checking out a Pinot Noir from a certified sustainable and 100% wind-powered Californian winery, and an organic Tempranillo from Spain, to talk about what that actually means. So it's a year of real change, and with change comes uncertainty. What if I don't like a Slovenian Pinot Grigio? Well, that's what we're here for, expanding your wine horizons, so you get to try things you might never have considered without having to risk full bottles. So let's get back to the studio to find out what you think.
Welcome back. We're back. Sorry that came slightly out of sync. It was meant to come before the first one, but it meant
Caroline
we could go into more
too
detail.
excited about selling hampers and non-alcoholic wine. So, it's just getting into it slowly.
Yeah, well, I haven't been there that often, so I'm still getting used to it. So apologies, but now we've been able to give a bit more. Yeah, no excuse for you. We've been able to give a bit more detail on non-alcoholic wine, which go into a bit more of the sciencey info for people at home, which is good. But now we're on to Riesling from Germany. If only we knew somebody who was a Riesling fanatic to help us talk through this wine. Jamie, do you know anyone?
Alex. No, was that not the answer? I just want to say there was a comment up there about Lights Riesling. Can you go back up, Alex? So these guys. So I'm going off at a tangent. So Lights, I absolutely love. We did one of their wines previously. In a Riesling tasting, and it was in our Superstars. But the Eiswein Zero, they do Eiswein Zero and Eiswein Dry Riesling.
Oh, I see what they've done there.
Exactly. They
clever.
do some really, really good wines. And this was when I first got into wine, this was one of the wines that got me into wine. They made this Riesling called the Dragonstone. Absolutely phenomenal off-dry Riesling. Very similar style to this. So
okay.
That's my
excellent
random tangent. So we are in Germany, we're in the Rheingau, and we are at Gutenberg. It's a family-owned winery. They've got about 18 hectares. And
how does that compare? Sorry, I know they've got 18 hectares. Is that big or small for that
that's
region?
Smaller than someone with 20 hectares and bigger than someone with 15 hectares.
I really shouldn't have asked that question, should I?
Ask
a silly question.
Germany has lots of kind of region. And there's certain things as you go, and we're not going to do German wine law today because everyone will be asleep in 3 seconds.
No.
But you've got kind of like your big areas, the Rheingau, the Rheinhessen, the Mosel, and within that you have wine. Certain wine make loads of space. Certain people have little. And then if you get into the VDP level, it's kind of like it's vineyard designate, kind of like Burgundy.
Right.
But that's all I'm going to give today, because otherwise no one will come back and go, he's boring. He talks about wine law the whole time. But this is, once again, we come into that alcohol in general, as we saw in the video, is creeping up a little bit. We used to go, a couple of glasses of wine was a couple of glasses of wine. But a couple of glasses of wine isn't a couple of glasses of wine anymore. But this wine takes it back to that, sub 10%. So you don't have to be no alcohol. You can definitely be low. And there's a fair few people. These guys at 9.5. We've done a wine previously with Tyrrell's at 10%. So there are really, really good wines without being 13, 14, 15, 16%. This, because it's German, it's Riesling with less alcohol, generally a little bit more sugar. So it does have a little bit of a touch of sweetness to it. But it's still got this racing acidity, and it's got this zippiness, it's got this freshness.
Yeah, you see, I can really get the acidity cutting through that sweetness on this one. And there is just that more balance. There's definitely a sweetness to it. You can taste the residual sugar, but it's like honeyed flavours and characteristics, isn't it? Which is really lovely.
This bright floral, this honeysuckle, this richness about, and it's got this. The sugar gives this richness on the palate, less so the sweetness. There's a lot of sweet flavours in there as well, which I think sometimes, yes, the sugar is 46 grams per litre, which, in comparison, once you get into kind of like the 70, 80 grams per litre mark, you're starting to talk dessert wine. Yeah. And something like a very fruity New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc might have something like 10 grams of sugar. So just for a kind of comparison.
So there is a lot of residual sugar in there, but Germany is historically a naturally low alcohol producer of wine, isn't it? Because of the climate.
It's cold.
Yeah.
You need sunshine and warmth. Right? That gives you sugar. Sugar turns to alcohol. And if you don't get massive ripeness, you don't have lots of sugar, which is interesting, because there's a lot of German wines that leave a lot of sugar behind, even though there's not loads of sugar to start with. I'm not going to go.
Let's not go into that. No, but I think the key thing for people at home is if they want a lower alcohol wine, if they're sort of driving, or if they don't fancy a big night or whatever else, Germany.
Or they want to drink 58 bottles and show off how much they can drink.
Well, I would argue that that's probably not a sensible thing to do anyway, unless it's you. But Germany is German white wine is a really good place to go because it naturally has lower levels of alcohol.
Absolutely. So for those who've been with us for a while, it's fantastic. You know where we might be going to next. For those who are new to us, we have a wonderful, wonderful winery over in Argentina who we partner up with called Al Passion. We've done their wine from their tasting before, but what they do for us is every month they send us some little notes and a video of what's going on in the vineyard, so we can trace it from the vines being planted to the pruning to the wines being made. And obviously, being Southern Hemisphere, we're getting towards that time where we're going to see a little bit of, grapes happening and ripeness and picking and stuff like that. So what they've sent to this month is a little bit of highlights of what happened last year. Some of their founders and directors got over to the vineyard, and just a little overview of what's been happening, what they're doing, and what we might expect from seeing in 2022. So here's a little video from Al Passion for you.
Hi, my name is Kathy. I'm one of the founders and investors in Al Passion Vineyard, which is located in the UK Valley in Mendoza, Argentina. And I'm also a member of the Online Wine Tasting Club, and I'm based here in the UK. What I'm going to do is to provide you with an update from the vineyard, which we're doing every month.
This month we're going to look back at some of the highlights of 2021. Gabby, our CEO, visited the vineyard in December, and I'm going to share with you some footage that was taken when she visited along with some of the other shareholders. See if you can spot Ezekiel, our resident winemaker, and Karim, our consultant winemaker, because they appear in the video. I look forward to sharing with you the progress in the vineyard as the grapes grow during the summer, ready to be harvested in March and April.
So, welcome back. And we might be a new year, but some things never change.
It's lovely to be back in seat. It's lovely to see you all again. I hope you're having a wonderful evening so far. I think we are moving now away from the low and no alcohol wines, which was a really interesting point. I'm more convinced
so
than I
now
was.
there's real alcohol.
Now
You've
there's
turned
real.
up.
I'm turned up.
Alex is here now. There's real alcohol.
But we are going to Slovenia.
So what we're doing for this second part of the tasting, as we are kind of covered in the video a little bit, is there's been a lot of wine shortages around the world this year, and B, there's a lot of places that are popular that have just really gone up in price. They've just jumped due to A, scarcity, B, popularity, global demand, and all those kind of
the
things.
Shipping shortages and all of those disasters that we've been seeing.
So what we're trying to do with this is our next two wines, and you can pour them side by side if you want, even though one's white and one's red, and then they're in the glass, and we can kind of talk backwards and forwards between the two, one kind of do what you like, is we've got a grape that you may well know from somewhere a little bit different that you might not expect to find it.
Yeah.
And then you've got a grape that you may well not know from somewhere that you would probably expect to find it, but where you might not get your wine from.
Indeed. I think it's originally a Moldovan grape, and the sort of the border between Moldova and Romania has been one of these things. They thought there was going to be reunification.
I was a bit sceptical about Romanian grape and that being somewhere weird, but the fact is Moldovan history, absolutely. That makes it very run of the mill. Exactly.
Quite right. But yeah, so I suppose the great thing about this is that if you look on a map, like we showed where you went from your Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc with Mudhouse, let's be absolutely fair. I think they have not replaced it. They have launched an incredibly similar looking Chilean Sauvignon Blanc that if you weren't to look too closely, you might pick up and think that's great. And it's a very different product, but that's what we're having to deal with if you're getting these shortages. But here, Slovenia, if you look at where that is relative to the famous part of Italy where Pinot Grigio comes from.
What the Cuglio Friuli Venezia region that runs through, and it's the same piece of land.
Yes,
it's the same piece of land.
Same Mediterranean influences, same heights from the mountains.
And you find you look at this area, and I don't want to upset anyone if people are from these particular places by tarring the whole thing with the same brush. But places that we don't always expect the wine to come from, like you look at Slovenia, you look at Croatia, you look how close they are geographically and also geologically to these regions that we know. Northern Italy is very similar to what you get in Croatia down the Istria and through this area in Slovenia. And the land is cheaper.
Yeah, the labour's cheaper.
So therefore you should be able to, as long as you've got winemaking nous, you should be able, and I'm not saying you're going after a similar product because everyone wants to make their own style, but you should be able to make a product of similar quality for less money. So why wouldn't you do that? And you look at all these places that we talk about wine now that are famous. 20 years ago we weren't drinking New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc.
No,
that was new and niche. And 30 years ago we weren't drinking Australian Shiraz, but it's new but it becomes the new thing. So who
Yes, there was
knows
a
if this is
massive
going to be
Monty
the next
Python
thing?
sketch that just took the mickey out of Australian wine completely and just wasn't fair at all. But yeah, now number 3 does seem quite full-bodied for Pinot Grigio. It's closer in style to the Pinot Gris. There's also a bit more texture on it than I'd be expecting from a classic sort of Italian Pinot Grigio. And this is this is a quality wine. Really interesting.
It's a really good wine, and Gasper makes some fantastic stuff. They do, they do the grapes that but they also grow some indigenous stuff there. But what they do with this is they let it sit on the lees for a little while.
Yeah, and that explains the
so
texture.
You've got, when we talk about Pinot Gris, Pinot Grigio being the same grape, you've got two really distinct styles. You've got that Italian, it's wet, it's cold, it's clean, it's fresh, it does the job in the sunshine.
Mm.
And then you've got kind of Pinot Gris from Alsace, which has this richness, this texture, this basiness, it's almost like waxiness.
But the price pressure on those wines is so hard that they don't want to do anything.
But this sits kind of right in the middle, which is really cool.
It does, and it feels like a wine that people have cared about a lot more than the really cheap end Pinot Grigio. So I like that. That's a very cool discovery.
It is. This is the kind of wine that, for me, being weird, geeky badger, that you would pull this up at a wine tasting, or a dinner, and you pour it. Goes really well with food. What would you have for this?
I don't know, because I mean, I would have been tempted to say the really light seafood, but it's got a bit more body than that. I mean, that's sort of heading into your really sort of more strongly flavoured sort of charcuteries and things like that for me. And that's
charcuterie. I would still pull back in the seafood, but not very light. But if you got seafood like in a rich cream butter sauce or something like that, like a seafood linguine kind of thing, I think would go really, really well. Because it's got that richness and that texture that will stand up to something that's got a bit of weight, but it's also got this beautiful acidity that just kind of would cut through any level of fattiness. I think would be really, really good.
Recommendations: some Doux de Montagne cheese, which sounds a nice idea.
Are you going to send some to us, please? Thanks. We'll send you the new address for the new studio.
Excellent. I like it. But yeah, I mean, it's a great that obviously I think for those of you who've been with us for a while, we've covered it when in its Pinot Gris form from Alsace. Well, I think what comes closest for me is bizarrely the one which we did in our English tasting, where we went to Oostbroek and they did a Pinot Gris that wasn't quite as full-bodied as the Alsatian ones are. But this is, again, it's that sort of middle ground that's beautifully judged, and I like that a lot.
Oh, Deborah Fleming says that Slovenia is on trend this year.
Is it? Wow. Fantastic.
That's why it's in my trends picture. That's why it's in my trends pick. Do I get a double thumbs up star for that? But no, have a look at Slovenia. There's some great producers. These guys are good. There's another producer there that I love, a guy called Eddie Stimic. He makes a Ribula, so it makes a weird stuff. But then he makes a Chardonnay and he makes a Sauvignon Blanc as well. So what this gives you the opportunity, and you can look across this area: Moldova, Republic of Macedonia, Slovenia, Slovakia. They make both international grapes and lesser known grapes. So what I say this for in the world of where we're going with trends, you can go for a relatively safe bet and go somewhere different and pick something that a grape that or once you've done that and you get comfortable with it. So, we're going on to this next from Romania. These guys make a Pinot Grigio, they make a Sauvignon Blanc, they make a Pinot Noir. So you could go through those grapes first.
And they're great value as well.
Really good value.
Think, but Feteasca Neagra, and there are different kinds of the Feteasca family.
There is. There's whites, there's reds, there's rosés.
When you see these grapes with funny, hard to pronounce names, it is very easy to shy away, going, I don't want to try that kind of thing, and that's a shame.
Especially if you're in a restaurant.
Yeah.
If you're in a supermarket, you'll pick it up off the shelf and walk away with it. If you're in a restaurant and you're not confident, you're not going to try and say that to someone. But the world shouldn't be about that. The world should be about exploring. And, the sommelier's job shouldn't be to go correct your pronunciation. Get on with it. Open up. This is delicious. Drink it. Who cares if you can't say it?
Lots of licorice on the nose, which is kind of normally a sort of characteristic I sort of find them with really sort of the thicker skinned, darker grapes. And
So this was started by an English guy, wasn't it?
Yeah. It started perhaps not quite the right word, but the modern what's the word? The modern version of this quite historical wine estate was started by Philip Cox, and he is married to a Romanian lady, and they moved over there, and I think it was in the very early 90s.
And started importing Heineken.
Yeah, started importing Heineken, exactly, and so it's a great story. Now the biggest wine producer in Romania, and 30 million bottles a year that they've been just. And what he said, and you can follow him on Twitter. He's a great laugh. So he's very honest and open and direct. And he just said, since the moment that everybody saw all this frost rolling down across Europe, it got right the way down as far as things like the Rioja region, which is crazy.
We saw candles in Julia in southern Spain.
Yeah, southern Spain. I mean, absolutely bonkers. His phone never stopped ringing from the people going, hi. So we were relying on a lot of Burgundy Pinot Noir. We actually think your stuff is as good, and it exists, unlike the stuff in France. So yeah, but I haven't drunk this one, so I'm going to give it.
But it is, let's before we jump onto this, let's talk about Pinot Noir. Who doesn't love to talk about Pinot Noir? Is if I turn around to you and go, do you want a bottle of Romanian Pinot Noir for 20 quid or a bottle of Burgundy for 20 quid?
Yeah, well, you'll buy
9 times out of 10 of people are going to say that. But the quality, but when you go, Burgundy is generally a little bit more expensive. If I said, do you want a 10 quid bottle of Romanian Pinot Noir or a 10 quid bottle of Burgundy or a 10 quid bottle of Romanian Pinot Noir or a 20 quid bottle of Burgundy, that's, and it does offer that value that it's worth getting in and drinking. But that's
fascinating.
This is an interesting wine because it's light but heavy.
Yeah, on the nose, I was expecting a really big boy wine, like some of the the Georgian red grapes are really big. That's partly a factor of the style. This is very carefully made, and it's not too tannic. It's smooth. It's got some
elegance.
Got some elegance.
This is, you called charcuterie on the last one. I called charcuterie on this one. This with some cured meats and cheeses and things like that. I think will be.
I'm with you on the pork. I want to go roast pork with that. I think that's, but yeah, I think very, very interesting. It's not what you'd expect in any way. It is dark coloured but lighter bodied and very gently made, I'd say.
Any thoughts or comments in the chat on this, Caroline? Here they come. This is not Pinot Noir. So these guys make a Pinot Noir, and I was using Pinot Noir as the analogy of things that are trending around the world and value for money. This is Petasca. It's a grape in here.
Yeah, and do they use any oak on this? I'm not sure.
Yes.
Yeah, it sort of feels like there has been a bit of that, but it's perhaps not new. It's a bit of
guessing because it escapes my imagination, but I think it's actually Slovenian oak is used in this.
Okay.
Slovenian oak, and it would be second use, third use. So it just kind of rounds the flavours out, and it's 2017 vintage, so it's had a little bit of time, a little bit of hangout, a little bit of rounding out. But it's just absolutely delicious, and it sits in that nice little place where you can sip it or go with food. There's lightness that you can sit and have a couple of glasses of that, but also enough power to stand up to some good food.
Very interesting. So I've discovered a new
some vanilla, cool definitely some vanilla and smoke in there, which is a sign of it having that little bit of oak aging and that little bit of age.
I like that.
I completely agree with that, but the colour, it looks like it should be such a
like
big
a Malbec
boy,
or something.
But it has this lovely, lovely fruit and this lovely, lovely elegance about it.
Yeah, a beautiful smokiness. The Romanian one, Deborah's favourite so far. It's a kind of. I mean, I can't draw an analogy to what other grape I would say this is a bit like. What other wine this is a bit like?
So the tasting notes, we've for those who have been with us for a while, we've moved on to this slightly new system that makes it a little bit smoother, a little tech issues, a little less messing around. We are trying to find a way to get a word cloud back into this.
We'll work it out.
But it is not there quite yet. The strange thing with a lot of these systems is you can have lots of the good bits of this one and lots of the good bits of that one. And unfortunately, we've had to do a couple of little trade-offs and that we haven't quite got someone that goes, yeah, we'll do all of that for you.
Yeah.
So, but if you pop your tasting notes in the thing, we'll obviously flash them up on the screen so people can see what your thoughts are. But it is something we're working on bringing back because I think it's a lot of fun to allow people to
Yeah,
share
for sure.
their notes.
Absolutely. That's I mean, I'm sort of almost getting a slightly sort of figgy nature to that one. It's got that slightly sort of aged
Dried,
fruit,
sweet
dried.
fruit.
Yeah, exactly. That's
Mm.
going on, but all of the flavors are balanced and quite subdued. There's lots of things going on, and it's not like a glass of Merlot. It's not like a glass of Cabernet. It's its own thing, and I love that. What you're also seeing with a lot of the wines from Eastern Europe, where they say it will be a Pinot Noir, they will be using a little back of we need more badgers, of course. Where's the He's going to go and get a badger. Don't encourage him. And Jamie's gone on that note. But yes, what you'll find is that they want to have that common international name of the grape that's on it. So it will be a blend where it will be Pinot Noir and some Petasca Negra, and so you'll find a wine which has got both the well-known grape, which is why you then pick it up off the shelf and give it a try, but also a lot of character coming from that. Somebody doesn't know why there's badgers. No, it's got past the point where I don't know why there's badgers anymore, but sure enough, there's a badger.
There's always a badger.
Goes with the mushroom pizza. But yeah,
Sorry,
I was just
very sorry to anyone who's new and this is their first tasting. It seems rather random.
Can we just, in like 10 seconds, go up to speed on why there might be references?
No, you need to keep coming and keep joining. Keep drinking and
our
you'll
very
learn.
first ever tasting featured a wine made by a vineyard just off the M1 by the Toddington Services, and which isn't the most auspicious start of it. But the wonderful chap came and sell us this, and he says, "I can give you some of my grapes as well, if the badgers don't eat them."
He was very
Badgers
worried
are
about the
always
badgers
eating my
coming and
grapes.
eating them.
Yeah. So and since then we keep running into other vineyards who apparently this is a real problem.
Yeah, was it Oxney? Oxney got one of Jancis Robinson's first ever 20-point wine with a Chardonnay.
Yeah.
So I would have had more to sell when I got my first 20-point wine, but the badgers ate 2 rows of the Chardonnay.
Yeah.
They didn't eat anything else. They just ate, so they got good taste.
They do.
But we are probably digressing.
We are digressing a bit.
Well, yeah, it's not probably. There's no probable about it. It's happened.
We weren't going to do any wine news really this week because, to be honest,
to be fair, the news is the news, and
it's been quite a quiet news day, I think.
And we realised we were at our own party for 25 minutes, so there's no news to be had.
I mean, there is the one thing we could probably say just very briefly, which is Saint-Emilion Grand Cru. There are 4 members of this top quality Grand Cru Class A category, weren't there?
Is or was?
There were.
Yes.
And now there is 1 because 3 of them have now quit. And so there's strange things are afoot in Bordeaux. But that's a big bit of news. Otherwise, it's
the other thing. I'm going to talk about my friends at other news sites are available. There's a wonderful one. If you get bored of wine snobbery and wine being over pretentious and either, have a look at Fake Booze. Fake Booze are phenomenal. It's a satirical.
It's like The Onion.
It's like The Onion, but for wine.
Yeah.
So have a look at them, guys. They're phenomenal. We might start doing stuff in there.
Total tangent.
Badger
this is the new name of our wine metaverse that we're just creating.
Ah, very good. Badger
Badface.
Cool.
Also,
so our internet is coming from us via what, when I read the instructions, is called Dishy McFlatface, isn't it? So we have Dishy McFlatface on our roof. So it goes well with the Badger McBadgerface.
Can you just retrack on the name of one of the
So it's from a winery called Cramley Recas.
Yes, and so Cramley Recas is the winery. This is their Solvari Reserva 2017. So that's the name of the wine. And then the grape is Petasca Negrara.
Yeah. But it should all be in the leaflet, shouldn't it, as well?
It is, yeah.
It is all in the leaflet, except Alex got a little bit excited, and it's from.
I was looking up which part.
It's from the region called Recas, It may say Rhone in your thing because
it does.
it's a
It's not
typo.
from the Rhone
So,
Valley.
so it doesn't suddenly mean before anyone puts a joke in it, it's not from Romania because I've done that joke.
Oh dear. Yeah. Anyway, look, it's yes, we will be putting a link up to the wines to buy, but actually I've just remembered that I don't think we've got the collection set up, so I might leave that one to Carol while she's busy producing. She's glowering at me now. Yeah, usually the tasting note's not quite what we get, but they seem to match tonight. Are they simpler wines? That's a hard thing to say, isn't it?
The thing is, tasting notes are so personal. So I wouldn't say these are, the first couple of wines, being very light, fresh, easygoing were. And, this first red, not loads of tannin in it.
Yeah.
But, so I wouldn't say simpler, but I think, they're red fruit dominant, white fruit dominant. There's less middle ground.
Yeah.
But we do have a couple of wines that are a little bit bolder, a little bit more full-bodied. So let's see where we go with them.
Well, because we're going to America now, aren't we? And
we're going to
got
America.
Our resident American
so
here.
We're diving into what we class as part 3 of the tasting. And we ummed and ahed about what this should be because I'm like, with the trends, we could do vegan, we could do organic, we could do sustainable, we could do biodynamic, all those kind of things. And my opinion is not one of those things matters is in its entirety. It's about how things are best practices. I've talked to a lot of people, and I'll let Alex pour some wine. Let's get wine number 5 in the glass while I rant on about my metaverse or whatever I live in now. You can turn around and people go, I only want to drink organic wines. But then you look at some of the organic practices in the USA, and you've got to spend $250,000 to get certified to be organic. And so if you're only making 20,000 bottles, how can you get certified organic unless you're going to pass $250,000 of cost on? Got certain people who only have a tiny little vineyard and they want to be organic biodynamic, but one year they get a pest in the vineyard and their only option is to spray or lose their entire crop and go bust. And what sometimes we've got to remember is wine, as much as we get excited about these chateaus and these rolling hills and this fairy tale side of wineries and winemaking, it's people's livelihoods and people's businesses. So I'm much, much more about taking a deeper look and looking at what the best practices are. Are they doing the best they can?
You have to bear in mind as well. This is a really important thing. If you are going to lose all of your grapes, that's not green. That's not eco-friendly because you've put all of this effort, all of this energy, all of the time you've spent out in the vineyard making these grapes happen. And if they just get eaten by the birds or they rot, then that's wasted. So that's 100% waste. So it's better to take the least bad option.
Exactly. It's best practice.
Best practice. And the French have, below the certified organic level, they have this thing, which I can't remember the French phrase for it. It sort of translates to sort of best efforts and best practices, which means I'm doing the best I can and I'm making the right kind of steps and improving it, and they get measured against these things, but I'm not fully organic certified.
But this is when we're down at Hashish, we were talking to Ferg about this, that there's a measurement for sustainability here, and you get a certain point scale. And so if you have to use loads of water and you're over the threshold, that doesn't mean you're out because you can compensate that by using lighter glassware or electric vehicles or something like that. So there's all these kind of things that put together to dive in and And no, absolutely, the misconception that organic means chemical free. You can put as much sulfur and copper on your grapes as you want, and it doesn't always mean that that's the right thing to do. And organic farming and organic winemaking, are two much different things. Yeah. You can be organically farmed. That doesn't mean your wine's organic, and you can do organic winemaking. Doesn't mean it's come from organic grapes.
Some parts of the organic certification
should we drink some wine? We get a bit high horseish here, aren't we?
But some parts of the organic certification are complete nonsense. So, for example, when you ship the wine into the country, the pallet has to be made entirely of organic wines. You can't ship them in a box next to a closed bottle of non-organic wine. That's lunacy. That doesn't do anything. That's kind of insane. But there are clearly, it's a sort of thing that people really care about, and you have to be a bit of a glutton for punishment to go for it.
Before we dive onto this, I'm going to very quickly answer the question on the screen. That's now disappeared on me.
Lost it. What was that?
Sorry.
So it was very vegetarian versus vegan. So it comes down to processing. Obviously, wine is made with grapes, which is a vegetarian product. But what we do with a lot of wines is we fine and we filter them. And when
that means to make them clear,
which is basically wine is hazy and it gets all the bits out of it. And there's some ways that can be done using animal products such as eggs, or there's a fish protein that can be used. And some people will do it with bentonite clay. So it doesn't mean that the final product has, a bit of bacon in it or any egg in it, but there's an animal product used in the processing.
Some use microplastics, which isn't very green. Polyvinyl PVPP, I can't remember what it stands for. But yes, there's lots of different fining agents.
Suddenly got a bit of winemaker McGee over here. Right, anyway, so
Monterey County, beautiful parts of the world, right? So if you take California, you've got San Francisco up here, and you've got Los Angeles down there, and this is towards the San Francisco end of it. But Monterey is absolutely stunning part of the world. You've got the famous Pebble Beach golf course there. You've got
the famous Monterey Jack cheese.
You do, the famous Monterey Jack cheese, and it is a wonderful place to go visit. And if you take a little sort of detour inland down a river valley, you get into proper wine country. And this has all of the makings of what makes Napa great, what makes Santa Barbara County great. This is a fantastic place to make wine. It's also the only place in America where the first place I've ever been in America where I was asked if I did know the Queen personally. But yeah, it's this. Every vineyard.
I met her once drinking Clos Vougeot.
That would have been a good answer. But yeah, it's a lovely part of the world. And this one, well, Hannah had a great a question about, does making wine use a lot of water? Now, obviously, the first thing is irrigation. Right? If you need to water your grapes, then yes, it uses a lot more water than if you don't need to water your grapes. And California, pretty much all of them have to water them. In this part of the world, there's not many dry farmed places.
You've got these massive reservoirs, going up through Napa Valley, up through the hills, and just reservoirs of water.
Every vineyard, when you're talking to a real estate agent, going, I'd like to buy a piece of land and plant a vineyard, the number one question you ask is, where can I put a well, and what's the water?
What are the water rights?
Exactly, what are the water rights to this? So it's a real challenge. But what's less known is that in the winery, a heck of a lot of water is used. So much water because you're cleaning barrels, you're cleaning tanks. If you have to clean a 10,000 litre tank out, well, guess what? You're going to use a lot of water. So what these guys do is they capture back all of the water they use, and they use it to drip irrigate their vineyard, rather than just a big spray like your garden hose pipe.
Drip irrigate means there's basically a hose pipe with lots of tiny little holes in.
They drip right down onto the roots of the vines.
Done. So it's very kind of specific, and the little holes will be basically near where the grapes are. Well, vines are even. But there we go. Yeah. But these guys, so District 7 is called District 7 because California has 11 wine growing districts, and this was the 7th one. So if they called it District 8, it would have been a bit silly, really. But these guys make phenomenal wine. This is big, it's rich, it's jammy. But they sit in the sustainable category. So they are certified sustainable by the state of California, which means they have to do a self-assessment, and then there's a bunch of criteria. There's 58 wine growing criteria and 37 wine making criteria that they have to get to do this. But they are 100% wind powered, which is kind of cool. A little bit different.
I haven't come across that before.
And I don't think I know another winery that I've drunk loads of that's 100% wind powered. So that's kind of cool and unique.
Yeah.
But they've been since.
So can tannins be explained?
No. No.
Some say
it's a mystery. There's a rumor.
Tannin. I'll tell you what. I'll let the sommelier talk about tannins.
So tannins are that flavour, that feeling in your mouth when you drink a wine. It's chewy, and it's just this long chain of chemicals in the wine. And tannin is the exact same thing as when you have your cup of tea, and it's in tea. When you steep your tea for too long, and you get that kind of like dry furriness on your tongue. But what
Sticks to the glass.
But what happens over time, and I'm going to explain this quite quickly, and then he's going to go, well, it actually does it. It goes basically over time, you get these long strands of tannin, which makes it feel very chewy because it doesn't sit into your taste buds, basically. And then over time, these tannin chains will break down into smaller pieces, which makes the wine softer and rounder. So that's where he'll then say, well, they do actually combine back together to do this and this and this. Well,
Yeah, they come. It comes from the skins of the grapes. It's the same group of chemicals that makes up colour. So you'll normally find, which is why the Romanian wine was such an oddity, because that had low tannins. It wasn't really chewy, grippy, but yeah, it's called polyphenols.
And one that goes the other way around, Nebbiolo, because Nebbiolo is light,
really light,
but rips your throat out with tannins.
Quite, that's your Barolo grapes and everything. So yeah, so that's tannins, and you can squeeze more out of the grapes by really working them hard. Pinot Noir, you have to work quite hard to get colour out of it, and the colour is very unstable.
Well, I suppose if we jump back a little bit with the skins, that's why white wine has none or very little tannin, because when we make a white wine, we don't really use the skins, and that's where you find that. And then the red wine, so in the middle of the grape, you get sugar, water, acid, flavour. That's what's in the pulp.
Yep.
And then the skin is what gives you colour and tannin.
And quite a lot of the fruit flavours as well come from the skin. So yeah.
But if you take the skin away, that's why you don't get tannin. And then these bigger, heavier, darker wines have more tannin because they've generally spent more time with the skin during fermentation. So more skin time equals more tannin. More skin time means more colour. So that all goes a little bit hand in hand.
So, but that's lovely. We should probably get on to wine number 6 as well.
We should. Have you got anything else you want to add about Monterey, apart from if anyone wants to send us some air miles, we're desperate to go there.
Oh, God.
If you're going to San Francisco.
I love Carmel. Carmel's a beautiful place to go. It's just on the sea. It has the most perfect beach, some incredible restaurants, nice little wine bars. It's just a lovely place to go. In fact, actually, don't go to.
So why are we doing this live from Leighton Buzzard?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So now we're going to Spain, aren't we? Just because Jamie wants to get rid of the badger and upgrade to sheep.
Vegan, sheep on the label, none in the bottle.
We've talked a bit about organics. All right, go on. Tell the sheep story. Go on. Tell us the sheep story.
I don't have a sheep story. That's just a fact.
Oh, yeah. Okay, right.
Well, there was badger about that earlier in the week.
No, that's a different story. All right, get back to producing, please.
Sorry.
Yeah, you had your time to shine over here for the first 20 minutes. I'm going to get bullied in the chat now.
Yeah,
it's going to be leave Caroline alone in the chat. So this is Mesta, and this is a cooperative winery in Navarra. So we're in Spain. You know, the home of Tempranillo, 100% Tempranillo, same grape that's used to make Rioja. But they do vegan. It's vegan. It's vegetarian. If it's vegan, it's also vegetarian.
That's true. Yeah,
kind of redundant. But it's also organic. But these guys, they're from the plains, the old cañadas, which is where they used to herd the sheep through when they migrated, and the shepherds would take them through. One of my favourite stories about this is they've still got the rights to passage through that thing. So cars have to stop and give way for any shepherding the sheep. So they can just wander into the middle of the road and take a flock of sheep across, and people have to stop. You know, like even if they walked over like the equivalent of a motorway, they just have to stop. It's absolutely crazy. But so this wine is, you know, it's soft, it's easy drinking. There's no oak on it. It's very well balanced. It's very fruit forward. But what I like about this, and you know, I don't want to jump the gun with pricing and things like this. It shows sometimes when you go after organic or vegan or sustainable or those kind of things, a lot of the time it seems to come with a price tag. Mm-hmm. It's like, we've got to, because we're vegan, because we're that, and it can be more expensive to do, but it doesn't always mean it has to be more expensive to do. But you know, same grape as you see in Rioja, and these guys, you know, they make this
style. It's more fruit forward,
and they're all about, once again, indigenous grapes. They make this, they make a Verdejo, they make a Rosé out of Tempranillo, and they're absolutely wonderful, and they tick all the certification boxes, and not because they've gone after it. And I think this is what's really important that we need to put about, you know, the vegan, the organic, this. What's in the bottle has to be good. Okay, you can't go, oh, this is vegan. It tastes bloody awful, but it's vegan, so buy it, or it's organic, so buy it. And when I first got into wine buying when I was in the States, I had this guy who set up this. He only had organic and biodynamic wines, and that was his leading point. And it's like, but the wine was
I didn't mean to put that one up, but it's very funny.
with the
I'm sure it helps in the vineyard.
Yeah, maybe in the vineyard, but probably not in with the fermentation.
No, yeah, perhaps not that much.
Yeah, we're not finding and filtering with that.
No,
I hope not. Anyway,
no, not
that would make for a.
But that oh dear me.
No.
So but if you think about one of the odder practices of biodynamic vineyards, is one of the things they do to improve the soil's sort of ecosystem. They bury cow horns full of cow poo. So perhaps there's something to it. Perhaps there's something. But certainly one of the big mysteries of the soil is how soil is not just a dead thing. It's not just rocks. It's not just crushed up things, not bits of old dung. It is all of those things. But if you take a teaspoon of soil, there are literally billions of microorganisms in that soil. And the grapevine can't get nutrients out of the soil on its own. It can't do it. All it can grab out is the water. And you need a symbiosis of the grapevine with all the microorganisms. So who knows? Actually, the sheep poo could be massively helpful.
So the question about the label is a sheep, 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 a sheep. Yeah, lots of sheep. It's just sheep in a circle. What more do you need out of life?
I've just seen a great comment from Julia. There are most of biodynamics is, let's say, it's closer to religion than it is science. In fact, it's much more in that. And the fact that the guy who came up with it was literally a Nazi. Let's gloss over that. But there's clearly some bits that work because they've done blinding.
So there's definitely a lot of skepticism about biodynamics, and there are some absolutely amazing biodynamic wines out there. Is it because they're biodynamic? Who knows? That's a different thing. But what you've got to think about is if you're being organic or biodynamic or this, and you're following all these rules and regulations, you have to pay so much more attention to what you're doing in the vineyard and how you're tending your grapes and how you're looking after. So if you're paying that much more attention, you're more likely to get a much better end product full stop.
Yeah. And you can't just spray and leave it for 3 months like you might be able to do. You have to be constantly attending to the grapes and seeing what's going on. And I think that for me the biggest part is the soil health. I think there's a lot of science in the soil health because the soil has such a big impact on the wine.
No, absolutely. Are we at that stage?
But homeopathic sprays? Come on, no.
Are we at that stage today to start asking people what their favourite wines were in the chat?
I think we should. Yeah. So obviously, just pop in what your favourite was because I'm struggling with this one because I loved that Pinot Grigio. That was a big discovery for me. But I thought the Fetiasca was brilliant.
I'm guessing between Caroline and Alex, the non-alcoholic wine was not your favourite. But did it open your eyes to how a non-alcoholic wine could be doable?
I think it's the first
or are you still drinking non-alcoholic beers or a Coca-Cola instead?
Oh, I'm going for sparkling because there's that I've tried the my wife brought one home and the Thompson and Scott, the naughty.
Why you guys?
Absolutely
We
brilliant.
can't put sparkling wine in packs. Why are you selling that, guys? Come on. Sell what we
available
got.
from all good supermarkets. But yeah, I think wine number 5 is probably the closest to my happy place in a glass. So do I go for interest, or that's a really great everyday discovery, or my comfort place? Because for comfort place, obviously, it's Californian Pinot Noir. That's me.
Yeah. While these are running through, do we want to pop the prices up?
So you go to graphics.
Yes, okay.
Up to overlay. There you go. Sorry. Hey, that's it.
So now, I just think this is where I want to jump in and go that the Mesta organic, vegan, delicious Spanish under 10 quid, and you can pop onto there's the collection there on the website. You can jump in.
That might not work.
Okay,
we'll
well,
fix it. It will about 10 minutes after the tasting ends if it doesn't.
but you could. They're on the website.
They're
We search for them anyway. And the thing is, we want to do this content. We want to put these things together, and we, as people can start traveling again, we want these winemakers to come over and sit in on these shows with us and stuff like that. So if you love the wines, show the support by bringing them in, and then we can get them in here and go, you know what, we put a wine on this and we sell 20 bottles, 50 bottles afterwards. We get more great content, less bad shirts, and the world's a good place. So how's it looking? Is it a bit of a mix and match?
5 and 6.
I'm seeing quite a few 4s though.
Well, 3. No one's saying 1.
No, I just saw a 2. I think
that was me.
And do you know what? Someone's saying that wine and one is cheap. Well, obviously, one of the parts of that is you don't have to pay for the alcohol duty, and then the VAT on top of the alcohol duty, which is
absolutely nice. So just for reference, the same wine that they make, same grapes, same whatever, with alcohol is at 10 quid.
Yeah.
So
you can buy that from Amazon, but we are cheaper.
Oh, there's a sales point for you. Cheaper than Amazon
Cheaper
on the
than Amazon,
non-alcoholic wines. That's
Ah.
great. So
I think 4's the most interesting.
I think 4's the most interesting. 5 I like, but I'm
6 is great
excited.
value, incredible value.
So, but I think that shows each wine does something a little bit different tonight, doesn't it? 5 is your happy place. 6 shows value. 3 and 4 are really interesting, but also at a great price point to be able to go, let's try something new.
Yeah.
But should we talk about what's coming up soon?
Sure, absolutely.
So what is coming up soon? So next month we are going back to Spain. We've done Spain before, but hey, Spain
is a long time ago.
It's also a very big place with lots of fun things. So
it's a very on-trend place as well. So
we're going back to Spain, and then in March, I think we're going to go to Germany.
Oh, are we?
Because we can, but it won't be all Riesling, I promise. It'll be less Riesling. And also, we're starting, and we've got one up this month. We've got a standalone tasting pack. So you just get the wines and you get the tasting notes. You don't have to put up with us, and you can just kind of try it and taste your own time with some tasting notes. But we've put up a vegan set. It does have this wine in it, so you get this wine again. But it's got the 2 other wines from these guys.
Yeah,
the white's fantastic. A couple of great Italian wines. So there's some really cool stuff in there, and all really good value. I think all the packs. How much is the pack, Caroline? Vegan. Yeah. It's on the website.
It's on the website.
That was great sale. Yeah. Great sales there. But we've got a vegan pack on there to try some different bits and pieces, and we are going to trial some different,
more high-end
ones some different standalone packs, so you can just drink in your own time without worrying about me and
Indeed. If anyone tried out our Superstars pack, what we did was we just gave the short version of Jamie a couple of minutes for each wine. You could watch the video on its own.
I thought the short version of me was you.
Oh my gosh!
He's in. It's 2022. Still sharp. Any final thoughts, questions, comments?
There's a lovely comment from someone who's joining us for the first time.
That's what we like to hear. Oh, fantastic. Thank you, Ben. And thank you to Ben's kindly neighbour as well. Yeah, I thought number 4, a genuinely interesting and surprising and wonderful wine. Really good nice.
Wine. Really good wine. So, but yeah, if we're there, I think we're there.
I think we might be.
But it has been, as always, an absolute pleasure.
It has.
If you've enjoyed the wines, we'll send them to you. Hopefully we'll see you next month. If you've bought this as a one-off and you're seeing us for the first time and you love it, tell a friend, tell a mate, tell a neighbour. If you didn't love it, tell us why. We'll get it fixed.
Yeah.
But we've got lots of cool stuff coming up. We're 2022. We're in the new studio. We've got new tech. There's going to be a lot of fun stuff. Fingers crossed we're going to be able to get a little bit of travelling this year so we can actually really, really take you out to the vineyards, go and meet the people, and just keep increasing your wine joy. Sad Sack here hasn't done a song this week, but I would say stay tuned until the end of the credits. But at that note, it's been an absolute pleasure. We'll see you all next month if we don't see you before on the adventures or something like that. But have a great night.
Thank you all so much.
You want to say roll credits?
Good night, and roll credits.